coming to you live from the heart of the free state of New Hampshire. This is The Independents with Carla Gericke. And now, here's your host, Carla Gericke.
Hi guys, and welcome back to The Independents. I'm so excited. I have a guest in the studio today, but you guys have to wait just a hot second to find out who that is. I just want to give a quick update to let you know on the right to know bills that I've been reporting on for the past month or so. Both the bills that were sponsored by or brought to the table by Right to Know New Hampshire have now moved on to interim study. So they didn't get ITL'd, which it did look like it might have happened at one stage. So we're going to continue our efforts there with the committees themselves to see if we can push those issues forward to, of course, keep New Hampshire's government open and accessible and transparent, and therefore accountable. Now, it is my great pleasure in a moment to welcome to the stage here my guest for today, who is Daniel Richard. So Daniel Richard is a dedicated New Hampshire citizen, a constitutional scholar, and chairman of the National Heritage Center for Constitutional Studies. And if you're watching this, you can go to their Facebook group, that is National Heritage Center for Constitutional Studies, where he advocates for a strict adherence to the state constitution in matters of governance, elections, and education. Based in Auburn, he has emerged as a prominent figure in challenging what he views as overreach by state authorities, and he has filed multiple lawsuits against New Hampshire officials over the years on issues ranging from election integrity and constitutional interpretations of voting rights, as well as legislative procedures. He's a vocal critic on certain educational policies, and currently, and what we'll be discussing today, he's working on an initiative called Save Our Schools New Hampshire, a citizen-led effort, those are the ones we like here on The Independents, aimed at empowering residents to challenge rising property taxes through abatements, halting what is described as unconstitutional education taxation, that's probably code for Claremont, but we can get into that, returning authority over schools to the parents, the towns, and communities, and refocusing education on academics, excellence, and accountability. So today we're going to do a deep dive into what I hope turns into a community revolt against property tax hikes so that we can get our school budgets under control. I'm thrilled to have you here, Daniel. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
So in a nutshell, tell people what Save Our Schools is about.
Yeah, Save Our Schools is about understanding how this entire crisis with schools and taxation has evolved. Everyone is upset about their taxes going up. There's a variety of causes for that. But also there's a big pushback with parents that have been very unhappy with what's being taught in our schools, and how there's a big shift from, I know I went to school here in Manchester.
Oh yeah.
And how everything is radically changed.
Do we want to say how long ago? By the way, it's my birthday, so happy birthday to Carla. My 54th birthday. Here we go into another year.
Absolutely.
So high school here.
Yeah, So everything has changed, and so for me as a constitutionalist and a scholar of history, I always go to original source. Mm-hmm. I know that the U.S. Supreme Court and the New Hampshire Supreme Court always base their opinions, or should anyway, in the majority of the time, based on what it meant when the document was written.
Yes.
Right? It's a social compact, and so you must read it contextually. And so that's always led me into deep dives as to uncovering, how do these changes, how did they happen, when, where, and how? We've got a beautiful archives up in Concord on Fruit Street. And if you go there, it's an extraordinary facility. I've done a tremendous amount of research through the last few years, and that's where I get the majority of my sources.
So maybe, Daniel, you are the guy I've been looking for in my life who can teach this class. You know what I want is I want a class that starts with a picture of the New Hampshire Constitution as it originally was, right? And then have like little things that slide in for each amendment as a timeline so that you can actually read the amendments over time, right? So you can see, oh, how were they tweaking things and why were they tweaking things? Because one of the things I actually love about the New Hampshire Constitution, unlike many states, we don't have, citizen referendums or propositions like you might see in California.
Right.
But here in New Hampshire, we do use the constitutional process, which has a really high bar, to change things. And in the 18 years I've been in New Hampshire, I think we've had 2 constitutional amendments. So it's not unheard of. The important part is getting the message out, making it understandable to the average person, right? To read it on the ballot so that they can say yay or nay. So are you in favor of using that kind of process?
Well, absolutely. And the root cause of the majority of our problems is not following that process.
Yes.
Right? And so that's what all of this leads to, right? Is that the changes to our tax base, to our education process, all of that has been changed without the consent of the people. And that's paramount. Part 1, the very first article, we're the only constitution in the world, New Hampshire's constitution, that starts with Article 1 that says, to get to the second part, all government of right originates from the people and is founded in consent. And so that sets up the stage. The rest of the document emanates from that very first sentence. And understanding that and then fact-checking it along the way is where you start discovering, because they timestamp every change that's ever happened. And so that's been a great research tool to me.
Great.
And so that's when I went and fact-checked a lot of these things. And so that's the backstory on how I got to find out all these details.
Okay, wonderful. So we will deep dive into the Save Our Schools part of it, but while we're just sort of stuck a little bit on the constitutional stuff, so a little side quest, everyone who follows me knows I like to veer all over the place. Just tell folks back at home, because I saw this in the news maybe yesterday or the day before, but fairly recently. There's this little nuance that just came out. I want to say it was Scallon up at the Secretary of State's office, who said there was some statement about the schools where it is colloquially now understood that it said of, but it actually originally said or. Am I remembering that correctly?
No, you're absolutely right. So what happened was, actually, it's best if I go in chronological order.
Okay.
So let me start at the beginning. The first part is the one I just quoted, the first Article 1, right? The second part is Article 12. And Article 12 states that while individuals must contribute their share to the protection of life, liberty, and property, what does the taxpayer get in exchange for paying their fair share? It's important. You get 2 specific entities, because that's what you're paying your tax dollars for, right? To protect your life, liberty, and property. But in exchange, there's a key element. And the first one is, no part of a man's property should be taken from him without his consent, his own consent, or that of the representative body of the people. In other words, the people must amend the expansion of the tax base. Remember, the Revolutionary War, this document was written after the Revolutionary War. The founders had the good fortune of looking at all the others, and then we were the last of we were actually the first in January 5th, 1776, but the document was highly defective. So after the revolution was over, they wrote a new constitution, which is the one we have today. But in that exchange, they put in, if everyone remembers from school, the Stamp Act, right? The king and the parliament were passing taxes at random, enacting laws at random, the very thing that's being done to us today, right? That they would do that. And so, of course, when they wrote the New Hampshire Constitution, they put this prohibition in there, which prohibits, because remember, Part 2, Article 5 of the New Hampshire Constitution is where our legislature gets all its power.
Yep.
But it says in there specifically, as long as it's not repugnant or contrary to the Constitution itself.
Oh, okay.
Specifically,
Yep.
the Bill of Rights. So there are 2 restrictive clauses, and this is the first one, that you can't just create taxes without our consent. And the proof of this is that in the foundation of our state, we had 2 methods of taxation only. The estate tax, which we today call the property tax, and the poll tax. That was it. But it was amended 5 more times. First in 1903, where they were unfortunately convinced to pass an inheritance tax. I disagree with it, but it went through the amendment process.
What's the old saying? There are only 2 things that are certain, right? Death
Right,
and taxes.
right. So
and
they
then
got
in
you there.
particular, death taxes.
They put 2 of them together, right? So the next one was the highway tax in 1938. Same thing. There was an amendment to the Constitution to authorize expanding the taxing power.
And that is an argument to say that if we want to tax, this is the process, right?
Exactly.
So they did it right, and then they started veering off more over time. Is
Yes,
that what happened?
that's exactly right. And so the next one that happens is 1942, the timber tax. And so again, an expansion, right?
Yep.
They get the consent of the voters to expand the taxing power of the state. The next time they do it is, I believe, 1968, the current use tax.
Okay.
To expand the method of taxation for people who had large real estate holdings. And the last one that I believe is the lottery tax to supplement the public schools as we know them today.
Interesting. So where did business and dividends tax come from? That's all statutory?
All statutory.
Interesting.
No expansion by consent of the voters.
And then is it correct to say, and please do correct me because sometimes I have some wild interpretations of what the situation is, but basically in New Hampshire, as a result of the 2 Claremont cases from the 90s, that is kind of where the court created this tax structure
Right.
for New Hampshire. Before that, it was local.
That's exactly right.
And then after Claremont, the state said, oh no, now we have to have a state tax with an adequacy fund that the state gives to every town. Is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd, and that's exactly what they did. And, unfortunately, the court has been accused of already predetermining the outcome of the Claremont decision and then re-engineering the legal gibberish that they cited to get there. And by the way, it's because of their opinion that I uncovered the mess. Because if you read the Claremont decision, you'll discover that they cite the original intent that I mentioned at the beginning,
Yep.
that we're going to look at this from original source and original intent of the framers.
And so that's where the textual error came up? The
No.
or of?
No.
Okay.
So what happened was, the second thing that this Claremont court writes in its opinion is that they're going to refer to a very important book called The History of Education in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And it was written in 1833.
Wow.
So it covered the first 50 years, starting with Plymouth Rock in 1620, and explaining how education had evolved from colonial Massachusetts and how fundamentally, when they landed at the Plymouth Rock and the boats kept coming and the population grew, that there was compulsory taxation then for the promotion of the Anglican Church.
Oh, interesting.
So the purpose was to teach the Bible and perpetuate the Anglican Church, and the pilgrims who would become dissatisfied with that practice in the type of churches that they were conducting at the time, because the Anglican Church was basically a modified version of Catholicism, right? When the king couldn't get a divorce, he says, well, I don't need the Pope. I'm just going to create my new church. And so that's how the Anglican Church got to be. So they brought that practice with them. And most people are unaware that, remember, from 1620 to 1776, 150 years goes by. That's a long time. So those abusive practices don't take very long for the people to realize that, hey, we don't like this, right?
Okay.
And so they're blurring the line between church and state because it is the state government or the colonial government mandating religion and education as one entity. So they push back. They move to New Hampshire and they start their own schools. Originally based on the Massachusetts model, but this would take us to the Revolution. And once the revolution came and went,
Once the revolution came and went, folks.
you get to the next side of the conversation, which is the New Hampshire Constitution in 1784 in Article 6.
Okay.
Article 6 was, in my estimation, a brilliant piece of work because it did truly separate church and state, and it would put into effect the following historical changes we're here to talk about today.
Is this where we hear the word cherish?
No, not yet.
No.
But it's going to be connected. It's directly connected to Article 6. So once that happens, now, back then, what they did is they said, look, as John Adams famously said, that the Constitution, he was referring to the U.S. Constitution, of course, but I think he was alluding to Massachusetts as well. The Constitution was written for a moral and righteous people and none other. Because the founders knew that in order to have a safe, secure society and a peaceful society, that everyone ought to be like-minded. You know, because back then, New Hampshire at the time was made up of 5 or 6 different Protestant denominations. But either way, they were all Bible believers. So say what you want about that today. The point is that's what the historical record shows us. But the next thing that would happen is they would put in Article 6, and let me check my notes here to make my point. They empowered the legislature to authorize towns, parishes, or religious societies and or bodies corporate or religious societies to support Protestant teachers of piety, religion, and morality at their own expense.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge deal. This would be removed in 1968
Oh, wow.
with no disclosure to the voters. And so what is that empowerment? What exactly did the people give the legislature the power to do? Issue corporate charters. Because everything is a political subdivision of the state. The town, the county, and the federal government are all bodies corporate and bodies politic, but more importantly, the reason they're incorporated is enabled to do the business of the state or the municipality, right? To be able to hold a real estate to put up a building, to be able to bank, to sue and be sued. How are you going to collect tax revenue?
Yep.
So this is established. This is how Dartmouth, by the way, prior to the revolution, Dartmouth was issued. The king granted them a charter. That's how Dartmouth came to be. Phillips Exeter Academy, same thing. Before the state constitution was ultimately established, that they were granted a charter.
Interesting.
So that's what they were saying from time to time.
I kind of want to do a deep dive on that maybe on a different day.
So, but the point is, that's what they were doing because for those of you who don't know, today if you incorporate a business, that power has been delegated to the Secretary of State's office by statute.
Yep.
So he now does the old business of the legislature. So by statutory rule, they've granted that power over there. But back in 1776, so when they said the empowerment clause, that's what this is, to empower the legislature to grant them charters to open a school.
Okay.
So, but there were 4 entities, the towns, parishes, bodies corporate, or other religious societies. Not mandating one. See, it was optional.
Okay.
And so the next historical event that happens is the 1819 Toleration Act. So the backstory on that is the dominant...
Let me guess, it's not quite as tolerant as marketed.
Well, no, actually it does. Here's what they do. The dominant majority of Protestants at the time were called Congregationalist.
Okay.
If you drive around the state, you see these old beautiful buildings.
Yep.
And so they were the dominant Protestant majority of the day. But what were they doing? The same thing that's being done to us today. They were compelling everyone who lived within the jurisdiction of the community to pay for the pastor, the church building, and the education of the children.
And now, are you speaking metaphorically where the church today is the school today? Or
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
they were one and the same. There was no separation between the two.
Gotcha.
Because everyone was still bound by Article 6, right, to teach morality, piety based on evangelical principles.
Gotcha.
So they were still. So what happened was, it led to an act in 1791 to give exemptions. So if you were a Baptist or an Episcopalian and you didn't want to pay for the congregational taxes and hire their minister to be your school teacher, you could get an exemption.
So, because shockingly, and I should have warned you before we got on here, the time goes really fast. So we
Sure.
have 10 minutes left.
Sure.
So I want to make sure we do get to the heart of it.
I'll move to the next two pieces.
Okay.
So
Is the exception similar to the abatement?
No. The exception basically was it leads to the people finally having had enough and they exercise their rights under Part 1, Article 32 to petition the legislature for redress of grievances.
I see.
The legislature would then say, no more church and state.
Okay.
The state constitution provides us the constitutional authority to separate church and state, and you can't compel the people to go to one church or the other.
Gotcha.
It's up to you, because again, it was all religiously based. That leads us to the next event, 1850. This is huge news. I published this in Granite Rock the other day, last Saturday, and it's the 1850 Constitutional Convention. Franklin Pierce, former U.S. president, was the president of the convention. The convention proposed 13 amendments to the state constitution, and I'll cover 5 quickly. Get rid of the executive council, replace it with the lieutenant governor, create a Department of Agriculture, Department of Railroad, and the Department of Education.
Oh, wow, okay.
And people said no. They woke up and they said no. And the whole thing was, it was the Democrats of the day. We got this from Bill Gardner. So the Democrats of the day tried to get this one-size-fits-all estate takeover, a mandatory taxing scheme, the very system that's in effect today. And the voters said no.
And what year was that again?
1850.
Okay.
That leaves the whole thing dispositive. In other words, the Claremont, and here's the dirty little business, it went missing for more than 100 years.
How did that happen?
It shows up in 1980 in the archives. And it takes from 1980 to 2005. So in between is the Claremont decision.
Wow.
They didn't have this document. This document leaves the whole conversation dispositive.
Right.
27 years later is the of-or controversy.
Okay.
We get the Blaine Amendment. The Blaine Amendment was based on
anti-Catholicism.
Anti-Catholicism.
Right?
But what they did is they reiterated that which was settled by the Toleration Act of 1819. The 1850 Convention solidified it, which was that you can't compel the people to pay a tax and force an ideology upon them.
Okay.
And so the 1877, where I uncovered this several years ago, but the time wasn't right. So I've been bringing all of this attention to my partner in crime, Tom Murray, at Government Integrity Project. And so I said, that's not of. So it used to say, no taxes shall be raised for the use of schools or religious societies. And they replaced it with the word of. So Tom went to Dave Scanlon and said, Mr. Scanlon, we found a typo. Would you confirm that it is in fact a typo, or was there a convention along the way
that changed it?
Exactly. And so there wasn't. So we got a letterhead from him. The archivist went in and dug this up. And then, by the way, where are the 1850 records? So, because I had a copy of the whole debate on the education clause, but not the whole convention itself. That's how I knew about this.
So you're really almost like an archaeologist of the New Hampshire Constitution,
and
right?
Changes.
And you need all the parts together in order to look at the picture, in order to build the full picture of the puzzle, let's say, so that it can be presented in a way that is cogent. So we have less than 5 minutes, so I want to make sure we do talk about this Save Our Schools thing. So this is kind of a grassroots initiative, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's been no challenge to Claremont ever since the Claremont cases were settled. 1993 that followed, we're at like Claremont 15 or 16 with a different name.
Right.
Conval recently, and the Rand decision that's still unresolved. And so one case after another, and what the court concluded is that the word cherish in Article 83. By the way, in the 1850 convention, they were going to move Article 83 to the Bill of Rights.
Oh, interesting.
And replace Article 83 with a compulsory tax, a compulsory schoolmaster.
Oh, interesting.
And so all of these things. But either way, this all is a hot mess.
So it's a hot mess, but we're going to try and solve the problem, which takes patience. But the idea with the abatements, and the website was saveourschools.nh.org. Saveourschools.nh.org, so people can go. It's a really slick website. It looks good. It's easy to navigate. But the idea is to try and encourage people on the grassroots level to file a tax abatement. This would be primarily in towns, if I understand correctly.
Correct.
And it has to happen before March 1st when the town meetings start to happen.
Well, very good. And let me cover the important aspects of the video. The video is a tutorial how to fill out the supplemental form. The state statute only allows you to file an abatement based on challenging the assessment of your property and or you need a relief because of a hardship.
Okay.
So those are the two fundamental, but it is open-ended.
Winter in New Hampshire is a hardship.
You're right about that. But either way, it doesn't specifically provide for a constitutional challenge.
Okay.
But you've got to check the boxes. So you file your local abatement first. You're going to lose. Let me tell all the viewers right now, if you filed the abatement because your town doesn't have jurisdiction to declare the tax unconstitutional.
Okay.
But you need that dismissal from the town, and the town's going to likely time out. The lawyer is likely to, the town attorney is likely to say, let it time out, because everything we say can and will be used against us in a court of law. So we're just going to let you time out. And so come July 1st, I believe, is the deadline.
Okay.
They got to answer. If you file by March 1st for 2025,
Okay.
you've got to file that. And then if they don't answer by July, then your two steps are, and we're recommending you go to the Superior Court.
Okay.
The Superior Court has the authority to issue a declaratory judgment to render the tax unconstitutional. Specifically, it's the statewide property tax for schools. It does not alleviate your tax burdens.
Burden for your local.
That's right. You still got to pay that
Right.
tax, but specifically.
And you
for
know,
the
I
kids.
mean, I'm someone who's like local is lekker, which is Afrikaans for local is better, you know,
Right,
because
right.
you keep it sort of in that area. We just got the 2-minute warning, so the idea is then that people can do the constitutional challenge. Is the notion to try and get as many people as possible, or is the idea to try and get as many towns as possible strategically? Like, what do you see the outcome? What are we driving towards
Well,
here?
the goal is that the court is the causal agent of the problem, and they need to resolve it. And so one entity doesn't get a lot of attention, but a whole bunch of ticked off people. We have 3 major groups. People who just got their bill and can afford to make the adjustment even though they don't like it. You have those who are going to be seniors and fixed incomes are going to
Yep.
be forced out of their homes, and parents are sick and tired of what they're paying for in schools.
And also, you know, the schools aren't really keeping up their end of the bargain. I'm fine with cherishing things if I'm like, hey, can the kids read and write, and do they know what the Constitution means?
Right.
You know, but we're not getting what we're paying for, and the payments keep going up. So we are out of time, unbelievably. So I'm going to have to bring you back, Daniel.
My pleasure. That's okay. Be my pleasure.
So sort of as a last call to action, sort of rev people up, kind of get them excited. Why should people go do this abatement? And do they report back to you? How do we navigate this? If we get 100 people to go, hey, I'm going to do this in my town,
We've already gotten more than several hundred people involved.
There we go.
So,
Okay.
and it shouldn't stop there. So it doesn't cost you anything to file the abatement. And if in the end we win in court, you're going to get a refund. The average statewide property tax for education is between 60 and 80% of your property tax
Right.
bill. So that's a huge refund. And it also forces the entire state to have a conversation about exactly what we're going to teach our children moving forward. We're going to have parental control, because remember, folks, he who finances the school or the teacher controls the curriculum. And surrendering that to the state legislature, your local school districts, and the teachers' unions hasn't worked out too well for us.
All right. Well, on that note, this was a riveting constitutional lesson. Everyone go to saveourschoolsnh.org. File your tax abatement. Get involved. Let's make this a grassroots movement that can really help to change the education landscape here in New Hampshire. I will see everyone back here again next week. In the meanwhile, I wish you peace, love, and understanding.